welcome to Women in Workforce, the series celebrating Capital Area workforce development. I'm Carrie Rosingana, and I'm the CEO at Capital Area Michigan Works here in the greater Lansing, Michigan area. I'll be your host as we bring together women in positions of leadership roles here in our region to help shine a spotlight on their workforce impacts and also address some of the disparities and challenges that are unique to women in the workforce.
And I'm Kate Snyder. I'm the CEO of Piper & Gold Public Relations, and I will be joining Carrie each episode as co-host. After decades of friendship, we met our freshman year of college, and working alongside each other at Capital Area Michigan Works, Carrie and I wanted to create this series because we really wanted to be able to highlight those contributions of women in the workforce and also workforce development as a whole. But what we really wanted to do was create a platform for discussion and a place where women could come together and talk about some of those unique disparities that we face professionally.
So every episode, we'll host a roundtable style discussion with fellow community leaders. And today we're gathered at Risky Studios here in East Lansing, Michigan, and we're so grateful that you've chosen to join us. So let's dive right in.
Okay, we know when we get fabulous, fierce women together that like our bios and our intros could be a whole episode. So we're going to call this segment, This Could Be a Whole Episode. And instead of reading off your full bio, I want to ask each of you to introduce yourself by summing up your professional biography in just one sentence. And then I want to ask you to share a single sentence of what you want people to know or understand about you that we couldn't read in your bio, because I'm really passionate about us going behind that bio. And I want to encourage you to be as candid or as personal or as vulnerable as you feel comfortable. Because we want to normalize being humans as leaders, but also normalize that you do not have to wear your heart on your sleeve to be an effective leader, and really break some of those stereotypes and stigmas about women in positions of leadership.
So just to give an example of what this might look like and how our guests might respond to this one sentence, one bio, I'll give you an example. For me, I have been in the business of working with humans basically my entire career. I worked with tiny humans as a former preschool development preschool teacher, and now I work with grown-ups who sometimes can still have traits that children have. And then behind the scenes, I think anyone who knows me knows I'm a deeply empathetic person. I lead with my emotions. I lead with my heart. And that's a little bit kind of behind the scenes, what you might not know if you just were to look at me on paper. So first up, I get the honor of welcoming my friend and someone who I've worked with in workforce development for a long time now. Shon'ta Dwyer is the interim dean of technical careers at Lansing Community College. Shon'ta, you get to be the first to share your one-sentence bio.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Shon'ta Dwyer, and Carrie said I'm the interim dean at Technical Careers. And I would say my bio, I have had over 15 years in workforce development and education. I worked alongside with Carrie, as she said, at Capital Area Michigan Works as a partner. I say my bio is I'm a collaborative leader. I am a force to be reckoned with. Okay?
Yes.
For it.
I like that.
Okay.
This is going to be good. This is why we're so glad to have you here,
Okay,
Shon'ta.
Good. All right. So next up, I get to introduce you to Jazmin Anderson. She is the events and market manager. So think farmers markets, all the cool pop-up market stuff that they do for Downtown Lansing, Inc. Jazmin, can you share that one-sentence bio as well as what's behind the bio?
For sure. So I feel like I've definitely had a non-traditional path to where I am today. Working in a variety of different fields and industries, and have really just learned that community is my jam. So that's where I want to be. I want to help develop community, engage in community, and that's what I do.
Love it.
Mm-hmm. So I get to introduce our final guest today. And sorry for the pause there, guys. I guess I was waiting for one cue that was non-existent. So our final guest today is Meghan Martin, who is the Executive Director of the Arts Council of Greater Lansing. Meghan, it's your turn. What's your one-sentence bio and what we don't necessarily see behind the scenes?
Thank you for having me. So my career, I would say, has been that I'm Lansing local for the lifetime that I've had here, and I've worked mostly in communications and government relations and just community development in general, and I'm very fortunate now to work in the arts as an arts administrator, and I get the best job in the world working with artists and arts organizations. And thusly, my behind the scenes is that I'm very fortunate, in my opinion, to have had a career that's female dominated, both in communications and in the arts. And in my leadership roles, I've strived to make other women feel supported and understood and valued. So I'm very fortunate in that aspect, and I try and pay it forward.
That's a good way to be.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into why we're really here. We have 5 questions, and the 5 questions are focused on your career paths, but they're also focused on workforce development, and we want to talk through some combination of these questions with you. We know we won't get through all 5, but we want to get through some combination of them with you, and we always start with the same question.
And that question, because it's a big one and it can really go all over, what are the biggest challenges that you believe are unique to women in the workforce or that women face in workforce today? And this is open to anyone who wants to kick us off.
Well, since you both looked at me, all 3 of you looked at me.
We knew you
guys
were
clearly
prepared.
looked like I had.
Because Meghan has notes. You came ready. I love it.
I did because, my knee-jerk reaction is to talk about how objectified and just taken advantage of I have in my career. I'm very, like I said, I have been fortunate to have a lot of women leadership, but I don't think that any of us would say that we haven't felt that way, at least in one meeting, if not several hundred meetings. So I don't think I'm unique in that. Just that, I've come up in a workforce that it has been better for me to remain quiet and listen and then respond. And I think that's the just how I've succeeded and how it has also become a challenge now that I'm in a leadership role that, I'm supposed to be the one talking. I lead 99% of the meetings that I'm in. And now I can't just sit back. I have, listening is for sure a skill, but as I was coming up, it was more of I'm really glad that you're here. Just sit there and listen. And that's something I've had to overcome in some aspects. So I think that's a huge challenge for women is the voice.
The voice.
Yeah. I agree with you. I've been had a seat at several tables, but my voice was never heard. I think that happens to a lot of women, so I definitely want to agree with you. I think it's important, especially women in leaders, that our voices are heard because we tend to be looked over all the time, or misrepresented, or we feel like a lot of guys, or I should say not a lot of guys, but a lot of people may feel like, hey, why is she here at the table? So definitely I think somebody who is a woman in leadership always should speak up and then make sure that, you're being heard.
Let's build off of that and then we'll come back here. What do you feel, this is everybody, but Shon'ta, what have you seen and experienced in your career that people can actively do to help amplify the voices of other women at the table or to help people be heard?
Yeah, I think it's important, especially in my role, being an interim dean, is to uplift other women. And that's either through mentorship, through just supporting their efforts, inspiring other women. I know I have quite a few mentees, but I'm also getting mentored even in this stage of my career in life. So I think it's important as well as a woman that we are involved in listening or giving our opinions on policies, procedures, because again, our voices are not being heard. So if we want things to change, then we need to speak up.
And I also think what I think when you say that, Shon'ta, too, that goes along with it is we need to empower other people that we're working with to know it's okay to use your voice. When you come to a meeting alongside of me as a leader, I want you to know that your voice is just as important as mine. If you have thoughts, share them. And I think that's part of it, too, is I think sometimes I will say as a woman leader, I felt like sometimes I have to wait, to say what I'm supposed to say when everyone else is done. Then I'll add something. But it doesn't have to be that way. And if I can show someone or tell someone and help set those expectations for you should use your voice, I think that's something we have to continue to drive forward too as women leaders.
And I think being comfortable having uncomfortable conversations with our male peers, it is really important because it's so societal, right? Like it's so conditioned that truly many people don't know they're doing it. And I remember a specific instance where I was presenting at a board meeting and an individual took a phone call, spoke, a male individual in a position of power, took a phone call, spoke, and then ended up having to leave and like kind of got his stuff together, went around and said goodbye to a couple of different people while I was speaking. And I thought to myself, would this have happened if I had been male and speaking? But also, does he even know that he did that? Right. And so it took way more courage than I feel like I have in this world. I do not like conflict despite how I appear. Like I come across as someone that's like, I mean, granted, if like you're rude, I have no problem with conflict. Like if you're being like an a-hole, whatever, like, no, yeah, we will go toe to toe. But that kind of conflict, and so, but I said something and I said it privately. I said it behind closed doors, but I told him, hey, this thing happened. And I just want you to know that I'm talking to you because I am presuming positive intent, that you didn't mean to disrespect me, but I felt very disrespected, and here's why. And he was like, beep, that was not my intent. I never even realized. You're right. I probably wouldn't have done that to a male CEO. And like, I will be more conscious moving forward. And I don't know if he was. I don't know if it actually mattered. But just like taking the step to point it out, because we can't just assume that there are these nefarious undertones constantly. Society is placed, a lot of people that are the ones not listening are not listening because that's all they've ever known.
Yes.
And if we don't point it out, they can't change it.
Yes, right. And I was just about to agree wholeheartedly with you that I think it becomes generationally ingrained on both sides, that generationally, those groups that are putting down your voice are also, on the other side, I'm generationally learning to silence my voice. And that it is like just something that you feel in your DNA that you are not supposed to speak up. And I think that that's something that I'm glad we're talking about it because, then my daughter doesn't have to deal with this baloney.
Yeah. All right, Jazmin, your turn. All right, your turn. Biggest challenges unique to women or that women are facing in the workforce today?
Yeah, I think from personal experience, I would say that we're kind of sold this pipe dream of like, there's this perfect level of balance that you can achieve. That like really doesn't exist. And really it's just a matter of learning to like accept that I'm going to do the best that I can with what I have available to me today. If that's, I literally just have to work all day today to get this project done, then that's what it is. Or if tomorrow I get to play Legos or Fortnite with my kids or whatever it is. But that there's no like actual, like I work 40 hours a week and I spend this much time with my kids on this day between these times, and that's just how it's going to be all the time. That doesn't necessarily actually exist, and it's not the goal in real life,
That's such a good point.
And that we get to choose what it looks, well, okay. women in certain positions of privilege and power get
Right,
to
yep.
choose what it looks like. Not everyone gets to choose, and even those of us in positions of privilege and power don't always get to choose, let's be real. But let me phrase that differently, that it's okay if what I want
That's right.
in terms of balance looks different than what you want in terms of balance, or what I want. Like, I don't like playing with children. I don't like it.
Even though you have your own.
I love my kid.
Yeah.
And I love spending time with my kid. I do not like imaginative play. I am neurodivergent. Imaginative play makes no sense to me. It serves no functional purpose. I don't like it. I do not like it. There's nothing wrong with it. Children need
Nothing
it.
wrong with that.
Nothing
Kate.
wrong with it.
I am not the parent to play that game with you. And so that's okay.
Thank you for making
right.
that okay
Right,
right
like,
now
'cause
for me.
I do not like it. And so Wilson will say, you know, like, Mama, do you want to blah, blah, blah? Absolutely not. But what I do want to do, I would gladly build that Lego set. I'm a parallel play. I never moved out of that. Like, I will gladly build Lego sets next to each other. I would love if we read together. I would love if we go out in the hammock and each read our own books and don't speak. I would love if we worked on a project together. Like, there's all these things I would love to do with you. I would love to go to the Barbie movie with you, which was super fun. But I don't want to make believe with you. It's not fun for me. And so I say, let's find something that's fun for both of us, right? Like, I don't have to just, we get to choose those things.
Absolutely.
But Kate, you don't have to worry about being shamed as a mother because you don't like that. It's
I-
okay. And I know
Thank
you're not.
you.
I
But
know
I
you're
kind
not.
of am, right? Like, if
Yeah.
it wasn't with this group,
Yeah.
and I'm sure, like, internet
Yep.
trolls will be like, how dare you
I know.
rob your
Yeah.
child of imaginative play? And it's like,
But also that's relevant to work too.
That's right.
You know, I'm type A to a fault sometimes. And I have my list and I check them all off and then I'm done for the day. Well, that's not realistic. Let's just be honest. I'm always going to have some work to do that's not going to get done every day.
Yep.
And I had to learn how to be okay with that. And those were things I told myself. Those were my personality traits. No one ever said, you cannot leave this building until you're done. It was me who forced that. And I think when I had a child, it became even more like that. Like, okay, I'm going to get everything done at work, then I'm going to get everything done as a mom. Like, that's just a recipe for stress and not being happy at anything. And that's what I think a lot of women feel sometimes.
No, I agree. You have to set boundaries because if you don't, burnout is so real.
So real.
On both sides, in the workforce and then also at home. And then you have to communicate your needs effectively because otherwise everybody will run over. And then you, again, Carrie, you're like, I need to get this done, I need to get that done, and I got to go home, cook, be wife, and mother. And it's just not real.
Yeah.
No.
I can, and I think one thing that perhaps Jazmin and I both have going for us is that a lot of those boundaries blur for the better because I can take my kid to a lot of the stuff that I do for work.
Nice. Yep.
Which is
I'm
good.
building
That is
community.
nice.
I'm taking her to art shows.
Yeah.
I'm taking her to museums. I'm taking her to festivals. And that's all part of my job. And I get to introduce her to things that I might not have time for otherwise if it
Yeah.
wasn't
Yeah.
part of my job. Because it's a 24/7 I'm thinking about the organization that I'm working for and representing.
That's
And
right.
so she gets to be part of that fold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's exciting for me to get to bring her in on that because it is a passion at the end of the day, but I can't do the 40 hours a week and then the infinite number of hours at home. It is a balance and you do have to set boundaries. It's when you can find those things that, you have to kind of blur those things to make it work. But I wonder, and this maybe is a follow-up question, how much our other counterparts in the world have to do that. Like men?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, men.
I know, man.
I mean, I am very fortunate. I have a really strong partner who has a lot of flexibility, and he has purposely chosen to not want to have a career that is in a managerial role. He's had that a lot in growing up, and he chose not to. And he said it's because he knows that that's my jam. I like it. I like leadership, and that means that we have to flex sometimes, and he will take on more of those traditional roles.
Yeah,
and I'm
That's
lucky.
nice. Yeah.
I know it's not that way everywhere.
right.
It helps. But I also think, even thinking about it from a leadership perspective, like I don't want my team to ever feel like I expect them to ride or die for my organization at the expense of their actual lives. And that's hard.
And I think normalizing those support roles is really important because, I love your honey and that, hey, I haven't seen you in forever. Nice to see you. But and I know I'm not even going to say his name because he was like very private and off the grid. But I've known him since we were 17 and 18 respectively. Well, we were both 17 when we met. We were babes.
Yeah, way to show me that I'm older always.
Yeah. I only mildly rub it in. But that being said, like I would still argue, and this is not diminishing or devaluing all of the amazing contributions he makes to your family, that he probably does about 50%. Because the expectations are so disproportionate that like even when it's a 50-50 split with two working parents,
it's still
like in a male-female relationship, it looks like this like very like wow modern, and I face that like a lot with my relationship too, because my husband is the primary caregiver because we have about equal roles, but in most people's minds that
math isn't math.
Yeah, that is a disproportionate share. And it's that's just how it rolls in our society. That like when we really break it down. Like he and we have parent meetings, and I have once a month we have parent meetings where we go through an agenda that we've added on to throughout the month, and we check off all those different things, whether those are like emotional based issues that we need to work through or make sure we're on the same page, or disciplinary shit that. Oh, that was my first real swear on the show. Don't know if it's okay. So you might get a beep over me. But like whether it's
Kate's real comfortable with you all.
But yeah, like we talk through like whether it's disciplinary stuff or it's just like, okay, we need to book Wilson's birthday party, or like what dates are we looking at for the spring vacation because we need to make sure we request them off, or blah blah blah. It's all those different things, and we make an agenda, and I still find myself writing I'm the one that takes the notes, and I write my name in for a disproportionate share of the tasks, and I follow up with him and he then doesn't love it. He's like, I don't want to be your employee, and I'm like, cool, but also
shouldn't have married a boss.
This is how you roll.
My son's birthday party is in less than 2 weeks, and I just got a text from him, my husband, today, like with like, okay, we're locked, we've got it set, right? Like so like someone has to follow up, and so like that burden is still there, even though I mean most people will be like, wow, your husband found the venue for your kid's birthday party. You know what I mean? Like, wow, that's amazing.
I think we could have a whole conversation, like an hour-long conversation, just on the mechanisms we use to stay organized in our personal life.
Oh my
because
God!
Everybody knows, like, what we use in our work life, but the additional mechanisms that I have in place, the 16 calendars that everybody has their favorite kind. And they're all color-coded, and they have tasks. And then we do, like, the big one on the weekends where it has check marks so that they feel like they've accomplished things. The mechanisms in place just to get people to do what we've told them to do 16 times in an app.
And the time that it takes to pull all those together, too.
Right.
It's all part of it.
I wound up in tears one night after 3 hours spent trying to, like, figure out all of the different summer commitment dates. Ooh. And, like, who was going to do what and how and when and blah, blah. And it was, like, 3 or 4 hours later, and I was literally in tears because I was with just notes scribbled all over. It was a mess. Let's talk about it. Okay, Jazmin.
That kind of goes with your next question, though. Like, what's the magic wand?
Yeah, okay. What would we change? Like, what are those tools that we're using, or what do we need aside from more personal assistants, that would probably be women in supportive roles, that to do that for us. Like, what are the tools we need? What are the tools we use?
That was so
Yeah,
Jazmin.
I was going at you because
Well, I just on like a very traditional level, I am a pen and paper to-do
Yes.
list person.
agreed.
And literally cannot function without it. It's like anytime I feel like my anxiety is like,
You write it down.
I'm like, okay, I gotta write all the things for everything. We have 5 events coming up. This is everything I need to do for each event, and like, you know, but also like calendars, like specifically digital ones for me personally. But I'm like, my husband and I, we share a Google Calendar, and that is where all the things go. There's a million events happening. Like just today, I went through on Facebook at like all the Facebook events that I've said like, oh, I'm interested in, and I'm like, what are the ones I'm actually going to, and like, let me put those on our calendar so we actually know what's going on. I mean, that's what works for me right now in this moment.
Have you noticed in your time? I just made this realization because I'm not a pen. I'm a pen and paper. I go bonkers with it. I just start like the scratch is just like unreadable, and that has developed over time. I used to have like the most meticulous handwriting when I was first starting off, and like as I look at, because I save all my notebooks from like the past 20 years, and I look back at those notebooks and I don't know if my brain has just like lost some sort of organizational tool, but now I have to do everything digital because it's not going to trigger some sort of like, oh my gosh, am I messed up? Like I can't write legibly anymore.
Another thing to be worried about.
Is it just me? Am I the only one?
Well,
Because I love notebooks. This is
I have
amazing.
a problem with like I'll write all the things and then I tear it out and then I rewrite it.
Yep.
And, yeah.
Do you really?
Yeah.
But there's a neuroscience like reason why that works, because like from a neuroscience background, our brain processes and retains things differently. That we've read on a physical thing that we can tangibly feel, that's not an impermanent screen, but then also that process of physically brain to hand writing it commits it to memory more, slows the process down, which allows for more critical thinking and problem solving. There's a lot of merit in the written version, and I've often wondered, as we do move more to some of these digital devices that can automate things and can help in different ways, there's also a consequence to that, because we may feel more out of control if we're not remembering as well what we've done, but then also the screen time and the neuro fatigue that the screen time causes, like, wears our brains down a lot faster than the looking at a piece of paper. So it's just really interesting that I don't know, I just
digital.
It's just very fascinating.
I have lists and
Sorry, that feels so good about like physically crossing it off.
there really
I
is.
agree with that.
I think for me, I write my notes in notebooks. I have so many notebooks. So I write my own notes and my own comments to myself. But when it comes down to like scheduling, and I don't know if this is a female thing. I don't know if this is just a me thing, but I always schedule everything digitally because I almost always am doing it to include other people. So other people are attached to those activities and those calendar things. So I need them to be digital to make sure that they're actually going to be there, or that people know about them. And I don't know if that is something that's more innate. Sometimes I'm a planner. A lot of women are empathetic. We take that on ourselves, or we're assigned that in some situations. And so that's why I organize it that way, I find, for myself.
Nope, I'm a planner too.
I
So
know you are.
I know, but I also love doing pen to paper, thousands of notebooks too. But I have to use digital as a resource because I need those reminders, like those scheduled appointments and stuff like that. So getting those reminders, it just keeps me on task because, like you, Carrie, I don't like being unorganized, and it bothers me to be unorganized, and I know it happens in our day, but it's like, well, how do I get back on task? Well, that's why I use digital, but I love pen and paper too. I do.
They say that what you were saying, if you ever see somebody, and I particularly see women in meetings. That's why this is relevant right now, but they will doodle. And a lot of the people that I work with are artists, and so they're doing something really elaborate too.
Yeah.
And that actually is the same mechanism of like you're
allows
more
them to
able to
retain.
focus and concentrate. But I've been in meetings where people have been like, is she even paying attention? Like about like somebody that I see. I'm like, they are doodling. They are retaining all of this.
Yep.
Be
It's how they
patient.
focus.
Yes. Don't be so judgy.
Yeah.
Very true.
This actually ties in so well with our next segment, which is called Facts and Feelings. So, I don't know if you've ever heard this phrase, but my therapist says it to me all the time, and she was so excited. I told her, I was like, I talked about you on Women in Workforce, and she was like, oh, you did? And I was like, yes. So she always says, like, facts, not feelings. Facts, not feelings, right? Like when I'm spiraling out of control inside of my own little head, but no one would ever know on the inside, look at the facts, not the feelings. My business coach does the exact same thing with me and is like, what are the facts? Like, stop. What are the facts, right? But we do want to talk about facts and feelings.
Yeah.
Because part of normalizing this conversation is recognizing that there are reactions to these facts. Like, we have to bring our receipts to be able to show people that these aren't just rooted in emotions, and yet they are inextricably linked. So I'm going to share with you some facts, and they're super relevant to what we've been talking about today. So we are looking at one of my favorite reports, Women in the Workplace, and it's analysis of role assumptions for women. So here's your facts. This one is actually a little bit of a story, but I thought it set it up really nicely. So in the news outlet The Muse, they were also covering the release of the Women in the Workplace report, and they shared this story. So the story was, I was in the elevator and pressed the button for the executive office, one woman relayed as part of the study. She was a director who'd been at her company for 4 years. Someone said to me, no, honey, that's for the executive offices. The interns are going to this floor. Here's our facts. 20% of women in the workplace have been mistaken for someone far more junior. Only 10% of men have had similar experiences. Women are also nearly twice as likely to report needing to provide more evidence of their competence and are more likely to have their judgment questioned in their areas of expertise and to be the targets of demeaning remarks. In total, 64% of women said they face microaggressions at work, with an even higher rate, 71% of lesbian and trans women saying the same, compared to about half of men. These experiences, they do add up, right? Like, women who experience these slights are 3 times more likely to consider quitting on a regular basis.
Oh, man. My initial emotional reaction is, oof. Like 64% of women.
Pretty high.
That is pretty high. And I mean, I will definitely say I've experienced that. You know, when I became CEO in 2020, I'm 43 years old now. I was 40 then. And I still have people call me kiddo and young woman. And, you know, it's my role has nothing to do with my gender or my age. It has everything to do with experience. And it's mind-boggling to me that that's still something that happens so frequently. And it also makes me mad because it's like, we need to speak up and say something when this happens. But it's a hard thing to sometimes feel comfortable at being able to address. I'd love to know, what do you guys think about that when you hear that?
It's sad. And
Infuriating.
yeah, it's infuriating. I feel like Carrie, same as you. I'm in a role where I oversee pretty much male-dominant occupations over at LCC. So I'm overseeing the career and technical programs where, hey, and then most of the people I work with are men. So, and not to say that I have experienced some of the things that Carrie said, I've probably experienced even more because of my race, but not in my current position, but just in my whole career, I would say. So it's frustrating. Sometimes you're scared to speak up. Sometimes you feel intimidated. But what I would say is you have to get the confidence to speak up because it has to stop. It has to end, and it's only going to start with you. Otherwise, it's going to continue to happen, you know. So that's just my 2 cents.
And I've started like I'm super like afraid to speak up in those kind of situations. And I've started to tell myself like I'm not speaking up for me. I'm speaking up for someone else. Right. Because like I'll do something for somebody else. Like I will go to bat for someone else, right? Okay, whose car are we keying? Like like what do you need me to do? I will. I'm the first person. I am the first person to block your ex on social media or slide into their DMs if you need some spying done. Like I am that person. But for myself, I'm not going to speak up. So I've had to change my own mindset.
That's right.
Of like, this isn't for. I'm not speaking up for me. I'm speaking up to prevent someone else to have to experience this.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. And it's unfortunate. I think I'm not alone in this, where just reading that story or listening to your story or you confirming that, a million stories of things that have happened to me over my career went through my brain as you're discussing these things. And I bet that there is not a single woman that you couldn't find a story in your time where somebody called you honey because they didn't want to remember your name. Or they completely just disregarded your existence there because you appear to be a millennial, and millennials don't know anything, or the ageism, or just those things. And it's really, really unfortunate, and we've managed to kind of work around those things. And that goes back to like what I was saying about generationally, like we are finding ways around these things as opposed to being able to speak up necessarily every time because we lack that confidence to go to bat for ourselves. And so we've found those ways in our careers to like either avoid that person that did that thing to you, or I'm very fortunate that I am in a very inclusive space with, the artist community in Lansing is very inclusive and very inviting to anybody of the LGBTQIA plus community or any gendered people, and it's a very welcoming space. And so I'm very fortunate in that aspect, but I'm also the voice of artists, and so I have to go into those spaces that are less inclusive for them necessarily and go be their person.
That's right.
And so that I've found to be empowering, where I have this this group of people behind me that I want to represent and speak up for in rooms where they're not invited necessarily. It puts me in some really uncomfortable situations sometimes with the level of disrespect, but I get to go to bat for those people and in turn myself, because I am somebody who values art and I am somebody that values equality and accessibility and things like that. So,
I think that, being a woman, being young, and being a Black woman, as you mentioned, all of those things have contributed in, that type of treatment I've noticed personally over and over and over again. And Lansing is super inclusive, but it still happens so often. And I think that as inclusive as Lansing is, there are still areas that are predominantly white, and it's just a reality. And some of those people lack respect and just basic, like, I'm going to remember who you are because we've had a conversation.
Right.
You should. Instead of the, excuse me, have we met? And so it's just, but I think it's important to have that confidence and be able to speak up for yourself, and also just collaborate with others who support you and can help advocate for you and with you.
That's right.
And propel you forward. So.
And point out those microaggressions,
Yeah,
right? Like when someone says like, hey, Shon'ta, can you take some notes for us?
Right.
Like, for you, you're going to be facing stereotypes and stigmas if you say no.
Yep.
No, I cannot take those notes because I'm here doing my job, which is to lead this.
How about
But
that?
if Carrie says, well, you know, we need Shon'ta to be able to focus on her contributions as the expert here.
Right. Yeah.
Is, you know,
Changes the dynamic.
yeah,
Yes, it
is there
does,
someone
yeah.
that doesn't need to actively participate in the conversation that could take those notes?
That's right.
You know, like the strength in numbers, as well as like recognizing even within that diaspora of women in the workplace, the positions of privilege and the perception challenges that different women face because of race or size, you know, or how they choose to dress or who they love or whatever it is, how we can leverage our different paths and avenues of access to like kind of like compensate, which is just one more effing thing that we have to think about in a room, right? Like how many men are sitting there going like, okay, so I need to recognize that, you know, so-and-so is gay and so-and-so is black and so-and-so is young and so-and-so is often discredited because of his shape and size. And so how can I help support each of them while also doing my job here?
Yeah.
And yet, we gotta change it somehow, and so
Well, and also, I mean, if we're in a room and we've been invited to a table, we have every right to be there. And why would you even question? Like, I would never question if somebody was younger and they had a CEO title. I'd never be like, oh man, they're so young. It's just that's their title, that's their role. They obviously have that designation for a reason. Like, why does it matter how old you are, what you look like? It shouldn't.
it shouldn't.
How you identify, but we all know all
happens.
too often it does happen, and we see it.
Yep.
We see it every day. Okay, we could go forever on this topic. We could go forever on all of these topics. But
I'm
That's
ready.
for round
we are going to move on to our final segment, which is our 10 words. So we're going to give you a moment to think a little bit about what we've talked about today, reflect on what we've heard. And I want to ask you to share what your biggest takeaways or takeaway happen to be, either that you personally are going to take away from this conversation or that you hope others will take away from this conversation. So 10 words or less. And Carrie's going to give you a little bit of time to think about that if you need it.
Yeah, so while you're working on your 10 words, I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you to you all as our guest. Shon'ta, Interim Dean of Technical Careers at Lansing Community College. You know how much I value you and what you do here. Jazmin Anderson, Events and Market Manager for Downtown Lansing, Inc. Thank you for all you do to support this community. Your work matters and is critical to the vitality here that we have in Lansing. And Lansing is my home, so I love having you here to help advocate for it. And Meghan Martin, Executive Director of the Arts Council of Greater Lansing. You make this world a beautiful place physically with the work that you and the artist community that you've built and support do here, but also just because you were dedicated to raising your voice and using your voice to make a change. So thank you. And I'll share that my word that comes to mind here from our conversation is passion. I can tell how dedicated you all are to not only the work that you respectively do in your organizations, but also outside of that in your lives. But also you are really passionate about these topics and making sure that you're thinking about who comes after us and what that's going to lead to.
So 10 words. Shon'ta, you want to start us off?
Oh man.
It
Trying
can
to
be
get this
less
down
than
to
10 too if you need
trying to get
fewer.
it to, I'm trying to get this less than 10 words if I can. I mean, when I think of 10 words, I always think of platform, because thank you, ladies, for giving us this platform to speak out, because this is where we start and this is where we continue. Again, connections is everything. So purpose and passion is what I do, and being inspiring other women is my goal. Like I said before, I love to uplift other women, especially women of color, so that they can be where I'm at right now, where you're at too, where you're at and you're at. My 10 word, I already said it, but I just want to say is supportive. We need support, and we need to be heard and listened to.
Awesome. Jazmin.
I would say do whatever you need to do to believe that you're a valuable contributor.
That's awesome.
Perfection.
That was
Yeah.
good. That was really nice.
Chef's kiss.
Yeah.
Always, when people get it down to actually 10 words, I'm like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's impressive.
You got it down.
Talker.
You got it down.
All right.
I know.
Have fun following that.
Apparently, I'm usually such a great rule follower, but that was really succinct and beautiful. I would say the one word that comes to mind is charged. I feel charged with energy to continue talking about it, and charged with carrying on the conversation. Charged with that to take it forward.
I share that feeling.
Yeah.
And one thing, I don't typically kind of add on here, but listening today and that word platform and giving people this platform, it is really genuinely and truly my hope that these women in workforce conversations are not just for women to feel validated, to know that they're not alone, to get ideas, to share ways that we can uplift and support others. But as uncomfortable as it may be, I really do hope people of all genders are able to listen to these conversations and start to pull out some of those big themes. Because I can only imagine that for a lot of us women, we're going to listen to this and it's going to feel super validating and like, yes. But for guys, it many of them, it may feel like more of the same or just like, why are they hating on me? And I really do hope that presumption of positive intent and the opportunity to hear these experiences. And if you ever think to yourself, like, well, I don't do that, I hope that's true. And thank you. But also, maybe if you see someone do that, you now say something. Or if you and you don't always have to say it publicly to make an impact. That's a huge generational thing that I learned very early on in some pretty traditionally hierarchical workplaces where I was granted huge amounts of empowerment, but you didn't contradict the boss in public. But if you went and talked about it in private, it never happened again. And so, just recognizing that these dialogues are cathartic for all of us that show up and have them, and there's still more we can do. But this isn't just on us. And as uncomfortable as that is, I hope that there are men that will take away from this conversation and be able to, kind of critically think like, there is stuff that I could do, or like, maybe I am part of the problem, and just start to ask the questions like, hey, am I an inclusive leader? Do I ever do the stereotypical things that like y'all are bitching about in these episodes? And if I do, like, can I let you know it's safe to tell me?
Yeah.
Like, if it happens, maybe like just slide the word raccoon into a sentence and I will know that I have done the thing. Like, we can get to those points of dialogue where it doesn't feel adversarial.
Yeah, it's not us versus them. It is all of
not
us
an us
together
versus
making it
them.
better for everybody.
Okay. Thank you all for being here and for sharing. I think I didn't skip anything. So
If you did, you'll raccoon later.
raccoon. There's a reality show I watch where like pterodactyl. I'm pretty sure it was F-Boy Island. But
We'll probably cut that one out.
but I mean that's the actual name. It doesn't say the F word in it, but they were yelling pterodactyl when they needed to be saved. So they just would be in the middle of a conversation and yell pterodactyl, pterodactyl, and like the other women would be like, I'm coming. It was great. Anyway, so on that note, that's the ultimate me note for y'all. I'm Kate Snyder, the CEO of Piper & Gold Public Relations in Lansing.
And I'm Carrie Rosingana, CEO at Capital Area Michigan Work, serving the Tri-County region in the capital area here. We can't wait to welcome a new batch of guests at our next Women in Workforce series, and thank you to all of you for being our guests today.
Thank you for
Thank
having us.
Thank you.